We're here in the GV Wire studio with Alison Weir. We're going to ask Alison some more follow-up questions, including some that the audience wanted, but there simply wasn't time to get to them. But first, we're going to ask Alison about what's going on in Israel in regard to the elections. In April, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu failed to put together a coalition government. So elections were held again in Israel this week. And again, the results are, maybe to no one's surprise, just about the same as they were before. Allison, what is your read on what's happening with the Israeli population and their attitudes in regard to Prime Minister Netanyahu?
Well, it seems to be a toss-up so far in Israel. From what I'm seeing, it's very close. Nobody has gotten what they need to form their own government, so it may have to be some sort of unitary government. For Palestinians, and I should clarify that I feel I advocate for all people and for Americans especially. But anyway, Palestinians are saying, especially people in Gaza, that this election will really make no difference to them. That all of the candidates, that both the, of course, Netanyahu, but also Benny Gantz, the supposedly central left party, have called for the ethnic cleansing of Palestine, have Gantz talked about sending portions of Gaza back to the Stone Age. Avigdor Lieberman talked about how many, they're bragging over who has killed the most Arabs. These are quotes that are from their campaigns. So for Palestinians in the occupied territory, the word seems to be that it will make no difference.
Turning closer to home, in 2020, there's an American presidential election. Allison, what's your read on the Democratic candidates? Which one or which two or three might best understand the complex situation regarding Israel and the Palestinians?
Well, the Democratic candidates, as usual, most of them are very cautious and really don't even want to talk about Israel-Palestine. Most of them, when they do, they use the Israel lobby talking points. The major exception was Mike Gravel, who sadly was never even a viable candidate. He was excellent, the former governor of Alaska, I believe he was. But of the remaining candidates, Bernie Sanders is by far the one who seems to understand it the most and be courageous enough to speak out about it.
And so just so we're covering both sides of the aisle, President Trump won in 2016, and there's a possibility he can win again. Could you tell us your thoughts on President Trump's understanding of the situation there?
Well, I don't know his understanding. It might be substantially better than we're seeing his actions. If you'll recall, because the Israeli media, which I read every day, were very concerned about Trump because he had spoken about talking to the Palestinians, about being against the Iraq War. He had made a number of fairly moderate statements before his election that were certainly worrying to Israeli hawks. Israeli peace activists were happy with them. But then when he became president, I believe he was under such an attack that he gravitated more and more to the right-wing Israeli donors, such as Sheldon Adelson, who has given hundreds of millions, well, certainly $100 million to Republicans.
And so whenever we talk about the situation between Israel and the Palestinians, those people that are very hawkish on Israel's behalf always brings up the actions of Hamas. Allison, can you address Hamas's role in this situation?
Hamas was elected. It's important to remember there were free and open elections, and Hamas won the elections. We need to understand why that happened. Under the main party, Fatah, things for Palestinians had gotten worse. The Israeli occupation was far worse. The oppression was far worse. So it's natural that a population goes to the alternative party. When we have recessions here, we tend to vote for the other party. That's what happened. Fatah, some of the leadership was known for bribes and corruption, just as the Israeli leadership is. And Hamas was known as being pretty honest. They represented the Palestinian population's views to a large degree. Hamas also, though, unknown to most Americans, has made a number of very moderate statements. They have offered long-term truces, 10 years or longer. They have abided by those truces in many cases. In most cases, when the truces are broken, and this has been studied by an MIT professor, for example, it has been Israel that violated the truces first. So Hamas has offered truces, it has abided by truces, it has recognized that Israel does exist. When it's asked to recognize Israel's so-called right to exist, that means Hamas is trying to say that Israel had the right to ethnically cleanse them, to ethnically cleanse their families. So they're not going to do that. Really, no population would do that.
Alison, you've been working on this since the early 2000s and working very hard, speaking all over the country and throughout the world. Do you feel like your message is getting out? Do you feel like that more Americans have a better understanding of what is actually happening on the ground in Israel, in Gaza, in the West Bank?
I do. I do feel that in the about 18 years I've been working on this, that there's a significant growth of awareness about what's going on and what Palestinians are experiencing, and that there is considerable outrage by many Americans about what's happening and the fact that our government sends Israel over $10 million per day, and that the first Senate bill of 2019 was to send Israel a minimum of $38 billion over the next 10 years. That's $7,000 a minute, and it's about $23,000 per Jewish Israeli family of 4. Many Americans could use that. So there's definitely growing awareness among a portion of the population. That change is not showing up yet at the policy level, but I think it will.
Alison, thanks for speaking to GV Wire today, and we wish you safe travels as you continue your message across America and throughout the world.
Thank you for having me.